The huge glass building floated in space like a crystal mountain. Inside, creatures from 100 different worlds sat around a giant table. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like walking trees. This was the Galactic Council, where the most powerful species in the galaxy made their rules. Today they were meeting a new species. Humans. Jin-Ho walked into the room wearing a simple black uniform. He was not very tall, and his brown hair was cut short. The aliens looked at him like he was some kind of interesting bug. Many of them were twice his size. Some had claws that could cut through metal. Others had technology that could destroy planets. "So this is a human," said War Chief Grak. He was from the Krillian Empire, a species that looked like giant lizards with too many teeth. His people had conquered over 300 worlds. Very small, very weak-looking. The other aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The Vex traders rubbed their forehands together, already thinking about how much money they could make from human slaves. The Thak warriors flexed their muscles, each one the size of a human torso. Jin-Ho stood perfectly still. He did not look scared. He did not look angry. He just waited. "Human," said the council speaker, a floating blob of green jelly with dozens of eyes. "Your species has just learned to travel between stars. You are babies compared to us. We have been flying through space for thousands of years. We rule thousands of worlds. Why should we listen to you?" Jin-Ho took a step forward. "Because I bring you a gift. A warning." "A warning?" War Chief Grak's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "What could you possibly warn us about?" "Yourselves," Jin-Ho said simply. The room fell quiet. Jin-Ho reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver device. He placed it on the table. A blue light appeared above it, showing a map of space. Red dots marked human worlds. There were not many of them, maybe 50 planets total. "These are our worlds," Jin-Ho said. "We have 6 billion people on Earth, another billion scattered across the colonies. We grow food, we build things, we raise our children. We want to live in peace." "Then surrender now," said a Vex trader. "Give us half your population for workers. Give us your resources, we will let you keep the rest." "No," Jin-Ho said. The word hung in the air like a challenge. "No?" War Chief Grak stood up. He was 3 times taller than Jin-Ho. His claws scraped against the table. "Do you know who you are talking to? I have burned 1,000 worlds. I have made entire species extinct. Your little planets would not last one day against my fleets." Jin-Ho nodded. "You probably could destroy us. You have bigger ships, more weapons. You have been fighting wars since before humans learned to make fire. But that is exactly why I am here." "Explain," said the council speaker. "You have been winning for so long that you have forgotten how to lose," Jin-Ho said. "You attack species that cannot fight back. You conquer worlds that have no defenses. You have grown soft." The aliens made angry noises. Some stood up, others showed their weapons. Jin-Ho kept talking. "Humans are different. We have been fighting each other for our entire history. Wars that lasted decades. Weapons that could end all life on our planet. We almost destroyed ourselves a dozen times. But we learned something from all that fighting." "What?" asked War Chief Grak. "How to make war so terrible that it never happens again." Jin-Ho touched the device again. The map changed. Now it showed not just human worlds but empty space around them. Dark regions where no ships traveled, no trade routes, no colonies. "This is our territory," Jin-Ho said. "We ask for very little. Just these few worlds and the space around them. Leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. We will trade with you. We will share knowledge. We will be good neighbors." "And if we refuse?" asked the council speaker. Jin-Ho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. "Then you will learn why we only give this warning once." War Chief Grak laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. "Are you threatening us, little human?" "No," Jin-Ho said. "I am offering you a choice, peace or war, life or death, safety or extinction. Choose wisely because this is the only time we will ask nicely. He picked up his device and put it back in his jacket. My ship is waiting. I will leave now. Take as much time as you need to. Decide. But remember, we have been planning for this conversation for a very long time. Jinho walked toward the door. As he reached it, he turned back one last time. Oh, and War Chief Grak? You said you have burned 1,000 worlds. We only need to burn yours. The door closed behind him with a soft whisper. The alien sat in silence for a long time after he left. Finally, War Chief Grak began to laugh. Did you see that? The little human thinks he can threaten us. This will be entertaining. But some of the older, wiser aliens were not laughing. They had lived long enough to recognize the difference between a threat and a promise. 6 months had passed since the warning. War Chief Grak had spent that time building his fleet and making plans. The other aliens in the council had tried to talk him out of it, but Grak was tired of waiting. Humans had too many good planets, and he wanted them. Today we show the galaxy what happens to species that dare threaten the Krillian Empire, Grak said to his officers. His war fleet was massive, 200 ships, each one the size of a human city. They could turn planets into dust. The target was New Sol, a human colony with 2 million people. It had good farmland and valuable metals under the ground. Perfect for the Empire. Sora sat in the colony's command center, watching her screens, with growing fear. The dots representing enemy ships kept multiplying as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Her hands shook as she counted them. 200 ships, she whispered to her assistant. Maybe more. New Sol had exactly 12 military ships. They were small patrol boats designed to stop pirates and smugglers. Against a Krillian war fleet, they might as well be paper airplanes. Send the evacuation signal, Sora ordered. All civilian ships are to leave immediately. Get the children out first. Red lights flashed across the colony. Families grabbed what they could carry and ran for the transport ships. But there were not enough ships. There never were. Captain Minseok commanded the colony's defense force. He looked at his tiny fleet and knew they had no chance. But he also knew his job. All ships, this is Captain Minseok. We buy time for the civilians. Nothing else matters. If we can give them 10 more minutes, 10 more lives might be saved. His 12 ships flew straight at the Krillian fleet. They lasted 14 minutes. Minseok's ship exploded first, taking 3 enemy fighters with it. His pilots fought like demons, ramming enemy vessels when their weapons ran out. They knew they were going to die, but they made sure it cost the Krillians dearly. When the last human ship was destroyed, Grak gave the order to begin orbital bombing. The attack started at dawn. Beams of energy fell from the sky like burning rain. The capital city disappeared in the first 5 minutes. The spaceport melted into metal soup. Schools, hospitals, homes, everything turned to fire and ash. Sora watched from her underground bunker as her world died above her. The screen showed temperature readings climbing to impossible numbers. The air itself was burning. "Ma'am," said her communications officer, "we're getting reports from the other cities." Sora closed her eyes. She did not want to hear it. New Busan is gone. New Daegu is gone. The farming settlements have gone silent. By noon, most of New Sol was dead rock. The Krillian ground troops landed in the afternoon. They were 8 feet tall and covered in armor that could stop bullets. Their weapons turned anything they shot into smoke. Sora led the remaining security forces in a last defense of the civilian shelters. They had hunting rifles and police pistols against alien war machines. It was hopeless, but they tried anyway. She lasted 6 hours before a plasma blast finally found her. The surviving humans, about 50,000 people, were loaded onto slave ships. Men, women, children, all chained together like animals. They would spend the rest of their lives working in Krillian mines or factories. War Chief Grak stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the burning planet. He felt very satisfied with himself. "Record this," he told his communications officer. "Send it to every world in the galaxy. Let them see what happens when you refuse the Empire." The recording showed human cities in flames. It showed human soldiers being killed easily. It showed human families being dragged away in chains. Greg wanted everyone to see how weak humanity really was. Send a message to Earth, Greg ordered. Tell them they have 1 week to surrender all their colonies. If they refuse, this happens to every human world. His officer sent the message and waited for a reply. Hours passed. No answer came from Earth. Days passed. Still nothing. A week went by. The Krillians waited for humanity's surrender, their plea for mercy, their desperate offer of tribute. Other alien species watched the galaxy's communication networks, expecting to see humans begging for peace. Instead, all human signals simply stopped. Every human trade ship disappeared from the space lanes. Every human diplomat left their embassy. Every human research station went dark. It was like the entire species had just vanished. Where did they go? Asked Grak's second-in-command. They ran away, Grak said with satisfaction. Like I knew they would. Cowards, all of them. But in the deep space monitoring stations, alien technicians noticed something strange. Human space was not just quiet, it was empty. When scout ships went to investigate former human colonies, they found nothing. Not just no people, but no buildings, no equipment, no trace that anyone had ever lived there. It was like someone had packed up entire worlds and taken them away. Maybe they really are cowards, said one Vex trader to another, running away to hide somewhere. But a few older aliens remembered stories their grandparents had told them. Stories about species that went quiet before they went to war, species that disappeared before they struck back. Those aliens began moving their families to safe worlds, far from Krillian space. They remembered that the most dangerous predators are the ones you cannot see coming. 93 days had passed since New Sol burned. 93 days of complete silence from human space. Hyun-woo floated in the captain's chair of his ship, deep in the darkness between galaxies. Around him stretched the largest fleet ever assembled by any species, 10,000 ships of every size, from small fighters to massive carriers that could build their own weapons while flying through space. The ship was perfectly quiet. No radio signals, no engine noise, nothing that might give away their position. They had been waiting here for 3 months, and they would wait as long as it took. "Sir," whispered his communications officer. "Message from Admiral Yu Jin." Hyun-woo nodded. Admiral Yu Jin commanded the entire fleet from her flagship, a ship so large it had its own gravity. She had been planning this moment for 15 years, ever since the Krillians had destroyed her home planet of Busan in a raid before humans even had faster-than-light travel. The message was simple. Phase 1 complete. All civilians evacuated to sanctuary worlds. Industrial capacity transferred to mobile platforms. Enemy believes we have fled in terror. Hyun-woo allowed himself a small smile. The aliens thought humans had run away like scared animals. They had no idea what was really happening. Far away in Krillian space, War Chief Grak was celebrating. He had sent scout ships to every former human world, and they had all come back with the same report. Empty. No people, no cities, no defenses. Just bare planets with no sign that anyone had ever lived there. The humans have abandoned everything, Grak told the Galactic Council. They are probably hiding on some distant world too afraid to show their faces. We can take all their territory without firing another shot. The other aliens nodded and made approving sounds. The Vex traders were already calculating how much money they could make from human planets. The Thak warriors were planning which worlds they wanted for themselves. But some of the older aliens felt uneasy. Species did not just disappear like this. When civilizations fell, they left ruins behind. Broken cities, abandoned factories, crashed ships. The human world showed none of that. They looked like someone had carefully packed up everything and moved it all somewhere else. "Where could 4 billion people go?" asked the council speaker. "Does it matter?" Grak replied. "They are gone. We have won." He was wrong. In the cold space between galaxies, Hyun-woo received new orders from Admiral Yu Jin. He read them twice, to make sure he understood correctly, then passed them to his crew. All ships prepare for Phase 2. Target packages have been distributed. Remember, we are not conquerors. We are exterminators. The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While other species built ships for show or intimidation, humans built them for one purpose: to destroy everything that threatened human life. Each ship carried enough firepower to crack a planet. The larger vessels had manufacturing facilities that could build ammunition and replacement parts while traveling faster than light. Some ships were entirely automated, able to hunt and kill for years without any human crew at all. But the most dangerous weapons were the humans themselves. Every soldier in the fleet was a veteran of humanity's endless wars. They had learned to fight in the resource wars when nations battled over the last oil and water. They had survived the climate wars, when rising seas destroyed entire countries. They had endured the final unification, when humanity nearly destroyed itself before finally learning to work together. These were not soldiers who fought for glory or conquest. They fought for survival, and they had been doing it their entire lives. Admiral Yu Jin stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the tactical display. Each red dot represented a Krillian military base, shipyard, or fortress world. There were hundreds of them, scattered across 17 star systems. "Begin jump sequence," she ordered. Across the fleet, 10,000 ships prepared to move. They would not attack one system at a time like normal military forces. They would attack everywhere at once. "Ma'am," said her tactical officer, "final count shows 9,847 combat vessels ready for operation. Manufacturing ships and support vessels are standing by." "Casualties expected?" Yu Jin asked. "Minimal, ma'am. The enemy has no idea we're coming." Yu Jin nodded. That was the point. While the Krillians celebrated their easy victory and planned to divide up human territory, humanity had been preparing for total war. "All ships," Yu Jin announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we begin the reckoning." The Krillians wanted to show the galaxy what happens when you refuse their demands. Now we show the galaxy what happens when you murder human children. She paused, thinking of New Seoul, thinking of the families that had been killed or enslaved, thinking of Captain Min-seok and his 12 ships, dying to buy a few more minutes for civilian evacuation. "Remember, New Seoul," she said quietly. "Remember our warning. They chose this." The first ships began to disappear, jumping through space toward their targets. Soon, the entire fleet was in motion, spreading out across the galaxy like a plague of metal death. In Krillian space, sensors detected nothing. The aliens continued their celebrations, dividing up human worlds among themselves, completely unaware that their doom was already in motion. War Chief Grak was planning his victory parade when the first kinetic projectile struck his homeworld's capital city. The war had begun, but the Krillians would not know it until they were already dead. War Chief Grak was reading reports about his new human territories when the sky exploded. The first kinetic projectile hit his capital city at 30% of light speed. The tungsten rod was only 6 feet long, but it struck with the force of a nuclear bomb. The government district simply vanished, replaced by a crater that glowed like a small sun. Grak stared out his window in shock. Where the city center had been, there was now a hole in the ground 3 miles wide. The edges were still melting. What was that? He screamed at his officers. Before anyone could answer, 17 more projectiles fell from the sky. The military headquarters disappeared. The spaceport became a lake of molten metal. The weapons factories turned into glass. "Sir," his communications officer said with a shaking voice, "we're getting reports from across the Empire. We're under attack everywhere." Everywhere was not an exaggeration. Captain Yoonji led her Marines through the corridors of Fortress Vectar, the Krillians' most secure military base. Her soldiers moved like death itself, their powered armor making them faster and stronger than any alien warrior. The Krillian defenders tried to stop them. Plasma bolts that could melt steel bounced off human armor like raindrops. Krillian soldiers, who had conquered 100 worlds, died in seconds, their weapons useless against human technology. "Sector 7 cleared," reported Sergeant Tejo over the radio. All military equipment destroyed, no civilian casualties. That was important. The humans were not here to conquer or enslave. They were here to eliminate threats. Krillian soldiers, weapons, ships, and factories had to die. Krillian farmers, children, and shopkeepers were left alone. This was not conquest. This was surgery. Across 17 star systems, the same scene played out. Human fleets appeared from nowhere, striking every Krillian military target at exactly the same time. There was no declaration of war, no demand for surrender, no warning. Just sudden, overwhelming violence delivered with mathematical precision. The Krillians had built their empire on speed and surprise. They would attack multiple worlds at once, forcing enemies to split their forces and fight on many fronts. It had worked for centuries against species that fought the old way. But humans fought a new way. Instead of attacking one system and then moving to the next, they attacked everywhere simultaneously. Every Krillian world with a military base woke up to find human ships in orbit. Every shipyard found itself surrounded. Every weapons factory was already burning. Admiral Yu Jin watched the battle reports flow in from her command ship. Her staff worked quietly and efficiently, coordinating attacks across half the galaxy. To them, this was just another day at work. Krillian 6th Fleet destroyed, reported her tactical officer. Krillian 9th Fleet destroyed. Krillian home, defense squadron destroyed. The numbers kept coming. In 6 hours, humanity had eliminated more enemy ships than most species lost in entire wars. Any word from their leadership? Yu Jin asked. War Chief Grak is requesting negotiations. Her communications officer replied. Tell him we do not negotiate with child killers, Yu Jin said coldly. On the planet Zarketh, Commander Jun Seo stood in what had been the Krillian Empire's main weapons factory. Now it was just twisted metal and cooling slag. His demolition, teams had needed only 20 minutes to reduce a facility the size of a city into unusable scrap. Sir, one of his soldiers called out, we found something. Jun Seo walked over to see what they had discovered. It was a memorial wall, covered, with symbols representing Krillian military victories. Hundreds of conquered worlds, millions of enslaved people, entire species wiped out for the crime of being weak. At the bottom was a new symbol recently added. New-souled, Jun Seo stared at it for a long moment. Then he pulled out his plasma cutter and burned the entire wall to ash. Move to the next target, he ordered. The Krillian Empire had spent 400 years building its military might. They had the best ships, the most advanced weapons, the most experienced soldiers in the galaxy. All of it was designed to fight enemies that followed the traditional rules of war. Humanity threw out those rules. Traditional warfare involved taking territory, holding positions, and fighting for strategic advantage. Humans ignored all of that. They did not want Krillian planets or resources. They just wanted the Krillian military to stop existing. So they made it stop existing. Shipyards became expanding clouds of debris. Military academies were reduced to empty craters. Weapons manufacturing facilities simply vanished, their atoms scattered to the solar wind. The Krillian Empire's greatest strength had always been their ability to project power across vast distances. Now that power was being systematically erased, one installation at a time. Sir, Grak's aide whispered, we've lost contact with fleets 4 through 15. Lost contact? Grak asked. They're gone, sir. All of them. Grak's claws scraped against his command chair. Impossible. Those fleets contained over 1,000 ships. They could not just disappear. But they had. Day 18 came and went. The human attack continued without pause, without mercy, without any sign of slowing down. Every time the Krillians tried to mount a counterattack, they found nothing to attack. The human ships struck like ghosts, appearing just long enough to destroy their targets before vanishing again. By day 21, the Krillian Empire effectively ceased to exist. Their military was gone. Their government was gone. Their industrial capacity was gone. The survivors found themselves on farming worlds with enough technology to grow food, but nothing more. War Chief Grak sat in his emergency bunker, surrounded by the last of his officers. Outside, his homeworld burned under human bombardment. "Send a surrender message," he whispered. "To whom, sir?" his aide asked. "We do not know where they are." The humans had appeared from nowhere, destroyed everything, and vanished back into the darkness between stars. They left no occupation force, claimed no territory, made no demands. They had simply removed the Krillian Empire from existence and moved on. The galaxy would remember this lesson for a very long time. 1 year after the Krillian Empire disappeared, the Galactic Council met again. The same crystal chamber, the same floating seats, but everything had changed. The aliens who had once laughed at humanity now spoke in whispers. Ambassador Dong Hyun walked into the room wearing the same simple black uniform that Jin Ho had worn before him. But this time, no one was laughing. Every alien in the chamber had studied the reports from Krillian space. Every species had run computer simulations of what would happen if they fought humanity. The results were always the same: total extinction. Honored members of the council, Dong Hyun said calmly, "I bring greetings from the Terran Alliance. We hope you have had time to consider our previous message." The silence was complete. War Chief Grak was dead, along with his entire government. The few surviving Krillians lived on farm worlds, growing food with primitive tools. Their great fleets were space dust. Their mighty fortresses were empty craters. "We have considered it," said the council speaker, its green blob form trembling slightly. "The Terran Alliance has made its position clear." "Good," Dong Hyun replied. "Then we can discuss trade agreements." The aliens looked confused. "Trade agreements? After what humanity had just done? You want to trade with us?" asked a Vex representative, its four hands nervously rubbing together. "Of course," Dong Hyun said, sounding surprised. "We told you from the beginning. Leave us alone and we can be good neighbors. The Krillians chose differently. You do not have to make their mistake." Over the next few hours, Dong Hyun negotiated 63 trade agreements and 37 mutual defense pacts. Species that had been planning to invade human space quietly offered to protect it instead. The Vex Consortium, which had been calculating profits from human slaves, now offered favorable shipping contracts. When the meeting ended, Dong Hyun had transformed humanity from a target into the galaxy's most sought-after ally. But the real message was not spoken in the council chamber. It echoed through every military academy, every government building, every strategic planning session across the galaxy. In the Altarian War College, instructors taught new lessons about human military doctrine. "They do not fight for territory," Professor Zekmal explained to his students. "They do not fight for resources. They fight to eliminate threats. If you threaten them, they will erase you from existence." A young Altarian officer raised her hand. "But Professor, what if we only attack one human world? Surely they would negotiate rather than start a full war." Professor Zekmal's tentacles trembled with what humans would recognize as fear. "Student, you misunderstand. There is no limited war with humans. Attack one of their worlds, and they will destroy your entire civilization. Attack one human child, and they will hunt your species to extinction." The lesson was being learned across the galaxy. In Thak space, Warlord Bractal studied intelligence reports about human ship movements. His sensors had detected strange vessels in the deep void between galaxies, ships that appeared for a few minutes, scanned his military bases, then vanished again. "What are they doing?" his aide asked. "Watching," Bractal replied quietly. "Making sure we remember the lesson. The human patrol fleets were the galaxy's new reality, ships that moved through the darkness between stars, monitoring any unusual military activity near human space. They did not threaten or make demands. They just watched, and everyone remembered what happened to those who ignored human warnings." Captain So Young commanded one of these patrol ships, the Incheon's memory. Her crew was small, only 50 people, but their ship could destroy entire fleets if necessary. They spent months at a time in the cold emptiness between galaxies, keeping watch over species that might be planning trouble. "Ma'am," her officer reported, "the Horthak clans are building up their raiding fleets again. So Young checked her displays. The Horthak were a pirate species that attacked weak colonies for slaves and resources. Their fleet was getting larger, and their raids were moving closer to human space. Send them a message, So Young ordered. Just coordinates. The message contained no words, no threats, no demands. Just the location of the Horthak fleet and the location of a dead Krillian world. The meaning was clear. We see you. Remember. What happened to the last species that threatened us? Within hours, the Horthak fleet scattered. Their raiding plans were quietly abandoned. This was humanity's new diplomatic tool, the memory of Krillian extinction. They did not need to threaten anyone directly. The galaxy threatened itself, remembering what had happened to those who tested. Human resolve. Trade flourished between human and alien worlds. Cultural exchanges brought new art and music to both sides. Human medical knowledge saved millions of alien lives, while alien technology helped humans explore distant galaxies. But underneath the friendship was a simple understanding. Humanity preferred peace, but they were absolutely devastating at war. Young aliens learned this lesson in school. The humans gave the Krillians a fair warning, teachers would say. They offered peace and cooperation. The Krillians chose violence instead. That choice cost them everything. In human space, life continued peacefully. Children played in parks, on New Busan, rebuilt from the ashes of Krillian bombardment. Families grew crops on New Daegu, their cities protected by defense satellites that never had to fire a shot. Ambassador Dong Hyun returned to Earth after successful negotiations with 12 more species. As his ship approached the planet, he could see the massive orbital shipyards where humanity continued building their fleets. Not for conquest, but for protection. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. Humanity was not cruel, but they were absolute. Cross the line they had drawn and face complete annihilation. Respect that line and they would trade, share knowledge, even risk their lives to help during natural disasters. The echo of Krillian destruction continued to reverberate through space, carrying humanity's message to every corner of the galaxy. We warned them once. We will not warn again. In the darkness between stars, human ships maintained their eternal watch, ensuring that this lesson would never be forgotten. The void itself had become humanity's messenger,